How far are we willing to go to express ourselves? It may require destroying the entire identity. Who knows? Which all great actors sometimes do under the worst of circumstances. And that is that one can't do anything from losing one's body weight or one's honor, if any. What did Heath Ledger not do to become the best Joker? Did he really lose his mind? And myself, I went so far as to believe in my own transformation, almost like I would have multiple personalities. But what I call personality, or to put it more correctly, persona, does not exist in an awake person. Like, if there is such an individual, what is there to say? You know, artists exaggerate, and Sukowski understood all too well the consequences of the extremes of art, but also what price one must be willing to pay to express oneself in a world of the blind. In my case, in addition to practicing makeup and professional voice exercises in how to feminize the voice, my body also began to function in a different way. And it was creepy. Van Gogh would have cut off his other fucking ear by now. I spent a lot of time in his loneliness studying my own nature. Alongside my self-mastery, there was an artistic side as well, like a kind of feeling within me I needed to express. You see, what I did to myself with the character I call the girl scene is some kind of art. You know, this is not what you call the coping mechanism and all the nonsense that psychologists talk about. And even more funny, as some have perceived that I struggle so hard with my sexual orientation that I'm trying to come out as the opposite sex and all that nonsense. But all this bullshit belongs to the lower dimension. Don't get me wrong though, like, transgender people's dilemma is about a completely different matter. To understand me, one must be ready to go beyond this whole reality. She must relinquish all her obligations, and insofar as she must have understood that the whole reality for me is an entertainment. And I recreate what I lose. In fact, there is no loss. What you call loss is not separate from creation. It belongs to it. There's a charm to a broken heart. I created the other half that was missing, which is the feminine side. And that energy is very intelligent if used properly in other areas. Not even all women know what it is exactly. It was also the case that a Kundalini awakening from a few years ago had brought about a radical change in my nervous system. Apart from the fact that my senses became very sharp, the feminine side began to express itself. And of course, but then again, the external world, which is so superficial and lacking in knowledge, has a different view of the matter. They thought I was a transgender, gay, and etc. So I was misunderstood. But also okay with all that. I mean, what can be expected of these people who always live in their illusions with the everyday lies that make up their everyday life? If you ask me about my mission, much of it was all about creating a complete human being. Instead of trying to be loved by a woman, which is almost every man's mistake, I became my own woman for myself. You know, it was quite ironic. It was just like Greek mythology where Narcissus falls in love with his own image that the water reflects. And why not? I mean, there's beauty in it. Instead of throwing 300 pages at a cheap novel, which all boring writers do, and take themselves very seriously, I turned that fantasy into reality and created my own woman and played that character in the real world out there until I was done with the whole thing. That's all. It was not that I was trying to be the opposite sex, but I experienced the world based on what the outside world thought of me as the opposite sex. Ish. As an experiment. And what I discovered through my character was striking. There's a whole book to write about. But I ask myself too, is it not already written? So when I get the question, will you continue with this art? Then my answer is no. I'm done with this character. And the hardest thing is leaving it. It's just like a divorce. You know? And many actors find it really difficult